my name is Michaela. I'm a PhD student at the University of Tübingen, and thanks for clicking on this video. I've started redoing some more book videos and I'm so excited because obviously a lot of what I do is educational related and what I'm doing with my PhD and our travels here in Europe, but it's so cool to kind of bring in what my main hobby is as well, which is reading. And I think like 2 months ago I participated in the Stuff Your Kindle Day. I can link the video up the top because I videoed it obviously, and I basically stuffed my Kindle with like 32 books, and I thought that I'd just have this as like a standalone video, and I hadn't filmed an intro because I thought that I could just go in, but after having edited this video I realized that it needs an intro. So welcome, this is what this intro is. Basically I thought because of it was October, November time, it was getting into autumn and Halloween and that kind of that time, that I would do the dystopian slash paranormal books first because, you know, I thought it was that time of year, why not read them? And so I did 3 books. The first book that I read was Qualify. I'll put a photo up here. And then the second book that I read was Sequenced, and the third was the first book in the Ever trilogy called Ever. I did actually get the whole trilogy, but I only read the first book so that it would, I don't know, not take too much time. But the first 2 books, Qualify and Sequenced, were dystopian books, and Ever was a paranormal book, so it was just 2 dystopian, 1 paranormal. And yeah, this is like my review reading vlog of how I found them. This video does contain spoilers. I'm going to try and timestamp throughout it if you want to get the book without spoilers, but really these are free books, and I don't know, I just I just read them and I talked about how I found them, and that came with spoilers. So I hope that you enjoy this reading vlog. I am doing Christmas books next because it's almost Christmas time, and so that will be coming out soon. Definitely subscribe if you want to stay up to date with that. But I guess we should just start. So the first book is Qualify, and yeah, we'll just get into it. So I am starting the first book and I thought, oh, it's only on 10%. My phone's just not charging at the moment. Anyway, it is the 27th of September and I've decided to start with the first reading month thing, and I've decided to go for dystopian in the sense that I was trying to get Luke to help me and he wasn't being very helpful. And between his silly answers, I whittled it down to the fact that I feel like reading the dystopian ones. So I need to go through and figure out which ones actually fit into this, but it's Sequenced and Qualify. And they're the 2 that I was pretty much excited for anyway. So I've heard good things about them. I thought, why not start with them? So I'm starting with Sequenced. So I will download that on my Kindle. And I don't know any, oh, I lie. I'm starting with Qualify. That's the one that I downloaded. So in the intro video, I said that none of them have like over a couple hundred reviews, and I lie because this one has 7,878. It has 4.5 stars, so I'm actually feeling like I might get this off to a good start. This whole reading challenge thing with a good one. It's 712 pages, which is kind of freaking me out, but it's fine. Apparently the average reading time is 15 hours and 10 minutes, but my Kindle is telling me based on my reading speed, it should be about 12 hours. We'll see how that goes. And I know absolutely nothing about this book, so I can't say anything right now, but I can say that I've got it up, I've got it downloaded, and I'm excited to start. Okay, I'm sorry, I just started this book and this is how it starts. Literally the first line. Today is a day like any other day, only it's not. Good start, good start. We're going to ignore the hair because I know it's crazy, but I'm having a period week. I'm not feeling too great, but I wanted to update on the book because I've read 10% now. I'm up to chapter 5. Am I up to chapter 5? Yeah, It's going pretty well. Like, it's reading really well. Some of the phrasing is a bit funny, like the introductory sentence, which was not my favorite way to start a book, but it's not reading badly, which is giving me high hopes. I think it might have just needed a bit of easing in. Basically, the plot that we have so far is that two like massive things has happened. The first thing is that there's an asteroid headed towards Earth that is pretty much gonna destroy the world, and around the same time some like aliens turned up to Earth, and it turns out it wasn't actually aliens, but Atlantis from like ancient times was a real place, and they also had a world-ending event, and so they were super technologically savvy and forward, and they built ships and found a world elsewhere and pretty much upped and left, and that's why there's no trace of them anywhere except in mythology. And so they came back and they're like, we're gonna try save you from this asteroid, and so they did like science stuff and like a whole bunch of different tests, and it turns out that it's made of a whole bunch of like metals or whatever, and like different elements that mean that the asteroid can't be redirected or broken up. So the world-ending event is going to happen, and all they can do is try and fill the ships that they brought with humans to come back with them to Atlantis, and they've only got enough for 10 million people out of the however many billion people there are in the world at this point. And so because they can only take 10 billion, they've decided to take kids or like teenagers, which personally I don't understand, because if you're trying to preserve knowledge and preserve like whatever, wouldn't you also include like highly qualified academics and researchers? And it's fine, they're taking the best of the students. This is like a YA, so it makes sense. But basically now all of the teenagers, I think it's people between 14 and 18 or 14 and 20, they have to go through these series of tests. So I've just finished the first round of qualification, and our main character, who's giving us the point of view, I'm gonna be honest, I keep forgetting her name, but I know that all 4 of the kids start with G, which I really hate it when books do that, because I just find it super cheesy. But anyway, there's the 4 Gs, basically the kids, and they're all super smart, even though they're like, one of them's a jock and one of them's a bit of a goth and all that. And they all made it through that first qualification phase, which was a general knowledge test of maths and science and everything. And then they had to do like some randomized testing thing where they had to match some singing notes, and they had to answer a bunch of random questions and choose their preferred landscape, like those image tests that you always do of like, where would you love to live kind of thing, and it's got images of a forest and a beach and sunset and all that kind of stuff. And then they were given 4 objects that they had to choose. You suddenly are in a important situation, which item would you choose? And our main character is like, well, am I like on a deserted island? Am I going into like a press conference? Am I like, what's the situation? They're like, you've got no context, you've just got to choose. And so it's like a knife, a pen, a map, and a shield, I think was the other one. Anyway, we got through the testing. It was like a 12-hour long day, and none of them were allowed to eat or drink anything, which, to be honest, I don't know why they didn't just pack snacks. They were basically allowed to bring a backpack and a duffel bag full of stuff, because they turned up to school for the qualification, and if they didn't pass, they go home, but if they do pass, they go straight away to the second round of qualification. So they pretty much are never seeing their family again. They just have to go and go and go through all the levels of qualification until they get on the ship and go. So I don't know why they didn't pack snacks. I guess they assumed the Atlanteans would be feeding them, and they haven't. So they have to now go on a 5-hour bus trip after this 12-hour day of testing to Pennsylvania, and there's a gas station after an hour where they can go to the toilet and buy food, and the kids have to buy food. So I'm assuming they have money on them, even though they didn't bring like anything else. I don't know. Anyway, I know I'm being very pessimistic because the beginning, I always find it strange how people like build a world and like try to get you to, I don't know, understand what's going on. I don't not like the main character. I think that she's trying to be too much at the moment, where she's like, she's smart but she's super klutzy, but she's not super klutzy at the same time, because she was able to like stay on this hoverboard thing, which was another one of the tests. But then she's like super smart and nothing phases her, and she like aced the general knowledge test. But then this boy that she's never spoken to before, who's like a senior, like takes her breath away and she can't breathe when he's in the room. And so she's worried about her next test because she feels like if he's in the room she's not going to be able to concentrate. But like he then leaves the room, like he does his test beforehand and leaves, and she's like can breathe again. I don't know, maybe it was like that. I didn't really have those moments in high school. But yeah, it's going well. I'm 10% in, and it's going a lot better than I thought a free book on Amazon would go. So yeah, exactly my point. They don't have any money to buy food really, so they're just buying chips and candy bars. Okay, I'm leaving kind of soon for a holiday, and I thought I'd just update you while I wait for my bus to come. But I am now, I want to say 30% through the book, maybe 35%. And it's going a lot different to how I expected it to go. I basically thought that they were going to do the qualification for Atlantis very quickly, and then the rest of the book would be them discovering Atlantis. But it turns out they're having to do like a full educational program before they go to Atlantis, and that's what this book I think is going to be about. I assume that the second book is going to be about who goes to Atlantis. And as you can imagine, the main character is quite significant in the education process. I figured out her name is Gwen, by the way. They're all G's. And I'm getting frustrated that almost every second character has either a first name or a last name starting with G. I think the author has a bit of an obsession with G names, but anyway, that's beside the point. Basically, they're going through the education process, and our main character keeps asking questions, and she really sucks at exercise, but then somebody is like offering to teach her how to run and all this stuff. So it's going as normal. So yeah, no, it's fine. I feel like I'm starting to get into the book a lot, where I'm starting to notice that I'm thinking about it when I'm not reading it, which is good. I feel like that's a good sign of a good book. So I'm quite happy with that. The one thing I'm really frustrated is that I feel like a lot of people who write musical elements into books generally don't have a very good musical knowledge, and it's really bugging me. And I hate reading books like that. I always try and avoid them as much as possible. But basically in this book, one of the ways that the Atlanteans work their tech is through sound vibrations, which makes sense. Like, I think that's a really cool element. And you basically have to learn as a candidate how to sing in order to get the technology to, one, assign itself to you so that it only listens to your voice, but then also you have to sing parts of the scale and arpeggios and stuff like that to make it do certain things. And that's like totally fine. I feel like it would have been fine if they'd left it there, but it's so frustrating that the main character is saying she basically doesn't know anything about music. Their family kind of had an unofficial ban on music because her mum had been an opera singer, and then she got cancer in the throat, I think, and she stopped being able to sing. And so then like they had this whole ban on that, not really doing any music. And so she's like, oh, I don't know anything about music, but I'm pretty sure that's an F. And I'm like, how can you know nothing about music and have perfect pitch? Like, perfect pitch is something that you gain either through constant repetition, or you listen to music so much as a kid that it kind of gets into your brain, for lack of a better word. Like, it's like how kids who grow up bilingual can just speak both languages without thinking about it. Music is kind of like another language. And so the fact that they have specifically said that she didn't grow up with music, but she's now having perfect pitch, is really bugging me. But it's fine. I'm trying to get past that because the rest of the book is doing pretty well. Basically, I'd stop here if you don't want any spoilers, because obviously the beginning of the book is kind of setting the scene. And I guess from here on out there's going to be spoilers, so I'll put up here the time of where you can switch to if you just want my final thoughts on the book. But basically the last thing that happened was that there was an accident with some Atlantean ships, and Gwen, the main character, was outside when the ship started to crash, and she managed to tune one of the ships, which is made of this Atlantean metal that you can tune by singing. She managed to sing it down to the ground, and then she saved the Atlantean from inside, who was, I think, knocked out or something. But yeah, it's it's one of those things where it's like, oh, she's like struggling and she doesn't know if she'll get through, but then she just happens to be there when this crash happens, and she just happens to sing even though she feels like she doesn't know how to sing. Yeah, anyway, that's about where I'm up to, so I'll update you when I'm a little bit further on, and by that point I will probably be in the UK, so yeah, I'll see you soon. So the goal here is to not drop my phone in the water because you're currently on the edge of a bridge. I don't know. Anyway, the other point is that I hope that it's not too windy here and that it's actually coming through my microphone. Alright, I'm just going to do this update real quick because I finished the book last night. Sorry about the wind, by the way, because it is Dublin and it's super windy, but I've just finished the first dystopia book, and it was not what I expected. So it was basically really slow at the beginning when they were setting the scene and telling you what the classes were going to be like that they were doing for pre-qualification, and then they did the semi-finals, and the semi-finals was like, I think 15 to 20% of the book. Like, it was a long thing, and it was only supposed to be like 8 hours of time, but the semi-finals were intense, if I want to say. I feel like it was actually probably the best part of the book, the best well written, and also the most thought out, which was really cool. And then after that, which ended at like 80% of the book or something, so there wasn't that much space left. I was trying to figure out what they were going to do with it, but after that, so they had 4 weeks of training and then the semi-finals, and then whoever got through the semi-finals, which, spoiler, the 4 family members did, they then had another setup which was like more training. So the same classes where like they had to learn about Atlantis culture and tech, and they had to learn about like agility and combat, I think. They added in swimming, and so they didn't really talk that much about the classes again because they'd already set it up. They kind of went through the swimming a little bit, but it was more just like learning how to swim / getting better at swimming, and then they went straight into the finals. So I think the 4 weeks between the semi-finals and the finals was like maybe 2 to 3% of the book. It was a really short time. And then the finals were like very tense, but I feel like the semi-finals blew my expectations for what it was going to be, and the finals were kind of just like, they're just like, it's 35 hours, I think, they were on hoverboards going through this maze, and nothing really happened, which I guess is the point. But like, I don't know, it was fine. It just wasn't as page turning as the semi-finals. And then the book finished, and it ended on a pretty big cliffhanger considering the way that the rest of the book had gone, because the rest of the book was very YA in the sense of the people you meet don't die, and the people that you meet stay in the whole way, even if it's tracking that they wouldn't stay in. But then something big happens at the end, which was completely unexpected, but I think I know what they're going to do about it based on, I don't know, they've made it pretty, I think you can guess one of 2 things are going to happen. But overall it was really good, and I, as you saw by my face, I was shocked when it ended. It just ended. I was expecting something else to happen and it didn't, so it's one of those things where I just want to buy the second book and read it, but since I'm doing this reading challenge, I can't. So I'm going to buy it anyway. I think it's like €3 but I gave it 4.5 stars. So for me, that was like a really good start. And there's actually another Stuff Your Kindle Day coming up, I think in November. So if you're watching this and you're wondering if you should stuff your Kindle, I think you should definitely at least get this book, because it was a very, very well written book. And while there were bits of it that I found incredibly frustrating and incredibly YA, it's the kind of thing where it only dropped it from a 5 to a 4.5 star in my scale. So yeah, I've rambled enough and I'm going to start the next book. I've actually already downloaded it. It's sequenced. I have no idea what it's about, but it's another dystopian, and I'm going to be starting that today. Yeah, anyway, I'll keep going now. I'm going to go secondhand book shopping because, of course, I need more books. Hello. Wow, that was one too many hellos. So yesterday was a travel day and I'm now back in Tübingen, as you can see in my normal familiar background. And I spent most of yesterday traveling and reading, and so I didn't really update you on how the book is going. But I think I'm like 63% through. I'm reading this, sorry, I'm just bringing up the Kindle app on my laptop because I'm recording with my phone currently. And Kindle should theoretically tell me how far through I've read. So I'm reading Sequenced by Elena Galia, and I think I'm like 63% through, 67% through. Okay. And if I'm gonna be honest, like, nothing's happened. And I think that's why I'm going it through so quick, because it's just, it's just average. I was really interested for the world that has been created, and I feel like this author has done some really good world creating and world building. And I was really fascinated by the beginning of the plot, where basically it's this dystopian world, I'm assuming in the future, but it's also kind of fantasy, and so with some fantasy things, you just never know when it's set. But basically what's happened is the world was in chaos, and this like godlike figure, who they call the Source, she came and introduced essentially tears to society. And the whole argument was that it's creating a space for everyone in society. So you get educated until you're 18, and then you go through like a ceremony where you get given a slot, and there's first, second, and third tiers in society, and like you get provisions, and your lot in life is very dependent on what you get sorted into. And so as part of the sorting, it's not just saying you're like a third class tier of society, it's more saying you're getting sorted into this job, and people with these jobs are in that tier of society. So for example, you get healers, which are very rare, but they're a first in society. So they pretty much get not unlimited provisions, but in terms of like access to water and access to care and all this kind of stuff is a lot higher for them. And there are engineers, for example, who I think are also class 1. But then there are protectors and providers are like merchant type thing, and they're class 2. And then you get class 3, which is like very low, and everyone, like, nobody wants to be class 3. And it's this whole thing about you just don't want to be downgraded at your sequencing, which is the ceremony you go through when you're 18. That whole world building I thought was really, really interesting. And the whole thing was that the book starts with, I think, like 400 years before the main plot line, and we assume it's a baby. But basically there's a class of people who are wielders, and I think they can wield magic, and they're being hunted because the queen thinks that they're destructive to society and stuff. And one of the babies gets smuggled out and placed into like quote unquote normal society. And there's this whole prophecy that a descendant from this baby will also be able to wield magic and bring peace to the land and equality and all that good stuff. So our main character, Nellie, is a descendant of that person, that baby, and I assume she's going to be the magic person. But I'm like 67% through the book, and all that's happened is that she's been sequenced as a healer, which is super rare. And when she was on her 3-day journey to the capital, which is where she was going to be trained, she gets kidnapped by people who are, like, they've separated themselves from this sequenced society because they don't believe in it and they feel like it's unequal, but also they feel like, or they know that people are being kidnapped and killed. And the reason they know this is because a couple, and like firsts are being kidnapped and killed, because like one of the guy's fiancés was kidnapped and killed, and like a whole bunch of stuff. And so because she's been sequenced as a healer, they knew that she was going to be kidnapped and killed, and they don't know why this is going on, but basically they're trying to save people from this and also eventually overthrow society. But that's all that's happened in 67%. She like got sequenced, the main character Nellie, and she started this 3-day journey, and on the 2nd day she got kidnapped, and then it's just been kind of explaining society, and like there is so much repetition in this book that I don't know, like the main character is kind of insufferable, but also the writing style is very, I feel like with some fantasy books, writers tend to go for I don't know what it's called, but it feels like this forced English formal language where, I don't know, it's what contemporary people or like modern people think people would have spoken like in England back in the day. And it's just like, it feels very pretentious, but it's also just super repetitive, so things keep happening again, but also phrases keep being repeated. So like, so there's this one section where she's talking about something and she's like, I've never seen anything like this before, and then it describes a bit more of the scene, and it's like, she's never seen anything like this before, and it says it like 3 times in one page, which is just way too much. And then it's stuff like, I've never seen a knob like this before. I feel like it's one of those things where, yes, she's seeing stuff she's never seen before, but it's almost taking away from that by how much it's being said. Like, it's very stating the obvious. And I feel like there was a scene with a kid who'd lost his arm, which was very, I don't know, it felt quite ableist, the way that it was written. And I don't know, it also feels like there's a lot of this book that she's just writing is almost trying to be woke. And I feel like there's a certain way of writing where things are normal, and then writing for representation and pointing out the obvious, where it's just like, okay, you didn't need to phrase it like that. In the sense that she keeps bringing up the woman's body and how, like the main character's body, and how Nellie, like, she made no secret about loving food, and she'd always loved her body. Life was too short to spend it worrying about how she looked. The source had blessed her with curves, and she would enjoy them. But then the whole book is about how she's been starving, and how because of the lot that she was born into, because her mum is a second, and so she's then a second at least until her sequencing, when she gets resequenced as a first. But her whole life it's been like she barely eats, and she often doesn't have enough for meals, for like 3 meals a day, and for breakfast she'll have like a slice of bread because that's all she gets. And so it seems weird that she's saying, like, obviously body positivity and everything, but then she's going like, it's no secret about loving food, she'd always loved her body, but like but she has no access to food. So it's just, I don't know, it just, to be honest, I'm reading this to finish it because I'm genuinely curious. Like, I would have thought the kidnapping and everything would have happened in the first like 20% of the book, and then the rest of it would have been her supposedly discovering her magic powers, because she's I assume they're setting it up for her to be a wielder, and for them starting to overthrow this society. But unless that's going to happen in the last like 30% of the book, in which case it's very rushed at the end when the first bit has been very slow and very repetitive. It's just... So yeah, I'm currently thinking this is going to be a 2 out of 5 stars. But you know what? I could be wrong, and I'm very happy to be wrong. I'm actually just going to look up what this is supposed to be rated. 4 stars. Interesting. Okay, well, it's supposed to be 4 stars out of 5. And the last one, Qualify, was 4.5 stars out of 5, and I rated it 4.5. I also think this book only has like 200 views, whereas Qualify had, I think, about 7,000 reviews. So, interesting. Anyway, I've been rambling for 10 minutes. I'm going to stop here, but I thought I'd update you on the book and what has actually happened, because I couldn't do that yesterday because I was on planes and buses until 2 a.m. Ignore my computer just going off crazy in the background, but I finished Sequenced. Yeah, I think I'm going to give it like a 1.5 to 2. I think I'm being generous with the 2, but I mean, it has some good stuff going for it, and it's not a terrible plot. It's just so repetitive and so much of it was a waste of time, and I was skimming through everything. And I was thinking about it at the end where I think I complained on here earlier, and if not, I'll just repeat myself now. But it felt like everything that was happening could have happened in like half the time, and that everything they'd set it up to be, which was that she was like the fulfillment of the prophecy, and she was going to be the one that can wield magic after all this time, and they were going to try to overthrow sequence society and everything, and it just didn't happen because she got kidnapped. And then we spent the whole time having her complain about stupid stuff because she says that she's never happy there, but then when she's spending time with the librarian, she says she's never felt happier. So it's just like complete contradictions the whole time. And then the book basically ends with her riding into the capital to try and find like a third talisman that will help unlock her powers or whatever, start the prophecy or whatever. And that was something that I thought was going to happen in the first book, that they'd find that she'd unlock her powers and maybe they'd start overthrowing the society in that book, or maybe they'd start off some set of events or whatever, but it just didn't happen, and it felt like nothing happened, nothing got achieved. And so I don't know, I feel like if you've read Mistborn, The Final Empire, which is the first part of the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson, it felt like a very similar concept / storyline that they were trying to go for, except that I know the Brandon Sanderson book is really long, but so much happens in that first book, and it just felt like nothing happened in this. And then you also get stupid contradictions in the sense where the book starts with Elijah and Dion, who are kind of 2 main characters, but not the main character, being really good friends, and they spend all of this time talking. And then as soon as Nellie gets kidnapped, they just like hate each other. And as the reader, we know it's because they both like Nellie, and so they're fighting over Nellie, and she doesn't see it for some stupid reason, when it's very, very obvious. But it's also like, how did they go from like in an instant being good friends who they've known each other for 2 years, supposedly, and been friends for 2 years, to just like suddenly hating each other? It didn't feel like anything happened. Like, it wasn't like, I don't know, one of them made a move and so the other one got mad, or like there's literally no point to it. And so yeah, it just felt like she was just complaining the whole time, and the whole book was just a bit So anyway, I'm definitely not going to be reading that again. It's like definitely like 1.5 to 2 stars, and that's been generous, very generous. But yeah, so I've actually started the next book, which is the Ever trilogy. I don't know, I think it's the Ever trilogy. There's 3 books and I'm just reading the first one. It's about 300 pages and I'm only, I don't know, like a chapter or 2 in. I started it while I was waiting for Luke to come home, when I was waiting at the airport. And it's a paranormal book, but not in the way that I thought I understood paranormal. Basically what we know so far is that the main character, Eva, I was going to say I don't remember her name, but the whole trilogy is basically based off her. I think her first name's Eleanor as well, actually, like the last book, but she changed her name to Nellie, or like was known as Nellie. And in this book, her initials are Eva, and so she just goes by Eva because apparently she likes that better. Anyway, 2 years prior, she got in a car accident with her best friend slash neighbor slash boy she had a crush on, and he died, but he came back as a ghost or something, and I can't yet figure out what it is, but the main character can definitely see him. And I think her family can see him, but I'm not sure because she keeps making comments about like, oh, my best friend was talking to him or something. Or like he came in to her room in the middle of the night because she was having a nightmare, and she was like, oh my gosh, but what if mum finds him in here? So it's like, I think that her family sees him, but it's all kind of confusing. Anyway, the whole thing begins with her going on about how she'll never love another person, and basically in love with this ghost of this guy that she'll never be able to get. And then the neighbor gets replaced. So like the guy who died, his dad moves out, and they fill their new house, the house with a new tenant, and she's instantly in love with him. And it's like, what was the point of the whole first chapter of this book, you going on about how you'll never love anyone ever again? And then the neighbor comes in and she's just like struck by him, and she just like stares at him out the window while she's eating a brownie and weird stuff. Anyway, once again, I don't have high hopes for this book, and I don't know what happened. This first book was really good, and the second 2 books have just been bad. But I'm only like 2 chapters in, so I really can't judge it. I'm going to try to get to the end of this book, and I think that's going to be me calling it quits for this video, because it's kind of hard to push through, I'm going to be honest. I feel like I have higher hopes for the Christmas books because I'm expecting it to be Hallmark level cheesy, because it's just like a silly romance book or silly romance genre. Whereas with these books, I don't know if I just have higher expectations for things that are dystopian and like otherworldly because of the amount of fantasy and dystopian books that I have read and that I enjoy. So maybe I've just got wrong expectations, but that's where I'm up to. I'll update you when I'm further in. I am going to film this review now, or at least update now, because I don't know how far through this book I am. I've got the trilogy version, and so when I'm reading on Kindle, it tells me how far through the whole 3 books that I am, and not each book individually. But the first book is 27 chapters, and I think I'm on the 21st chapter, so I'm like a significant way through. I was gonna update earlier, but to be honest, nothing was happening, and it was all just like vibes, which is totally fine. Like, I feel like it was one of those books where it was like, yeah, it was cool, this is a chill book. One of those books where they don't really explain anything to you, things just happen. And then all of a sudden, just like everything happened all at the same time, and it was really, really strange. And I don't know what's happening with this book anymore. I don't know what the rules for this world are, and like, it's cool, it's still just vibes, but I don't know what's happening. Basically, I think I don't remember what I said in my last update, because it's been a while. But basically, there's this girl called Eva, and she has a ghost who is her best friend from like childhood, and they got in a car accident together, and he died, and she walked away fine, but he died, and he's now a ghost living in her house, and not everybody can see ghosts, but she can, and her whole family can, and her best friend can. So I don't know the reasons why that they can, because nobody ever really explains it. And then she gets in a relationship with her neighbor, and the ghost, Frankie, is saying like, he's a bad guy, like, don't be anything to do with him, like, what are you doing, kind of thing. And just like wouldn't give her a reason why. He just kept saying break up with him. And she was like, I don't know, it was this point of contention, and she's like, well, I love my ghost, and I loved him when he was alive, but I'm never going to have a relationship with a ghost, and so why am I still trying to do this? I need to move on. And she was using the boy from next door as like a way to get over him, because he was a real relationship and everything. So that's basically all that's happened, is back and forth, them going on dates, him never telling her anything. Like, she gets really frustrated that like she feels so open, honest with him, but he never tells her anything.
And then all of a sudden they're coming home from a date and there's a car accident and her dad is dead. And it was just like, wait, what? And so her dad dies and she swears she sees his ghost, but it turns out he hasn't stuck around as a ghost and she has no idea why. And Frankie, the ghost, has no idea why. And then, like, I think the day of her father's funeral, she decides she's just gonna, like, give her everything to her boyfriend because obviously she's upset and everything. And then halfway through, he says something like, not something silly, but something suspicious. And she's like, wait, how did you know that it was my dad that died? Because he was the one that had pointed out, it's your dad. And he just instantly clams up and he's like, this isn't working out. I think we should break up, and just ups and leaves. And she's super confused because it's just come absolutely out of nowhere. I mean, like, they were about to sleep together. And then he just disappears, and then she doesn't see him for a month. He just completely disappears, and she's really upset, and she goes into a depression. But her mum's also into a depression, so she's, like, upset but still functioning, whereas her mum is just, like, not functioning. Anyway, after a month, she decides to go to a party with her girl best friend, who's also a childhood friend, and she's also dating a new guy who didn't like Toby, and we don't know why he doesn't like Toby, we just know that he doesn't. And then they go to a party, and she sees Toby, the boy next door, and she's like, what's he doing here? Like, I haven't seen him for a month. And he's got, like, this girl draped over him on the couch, like a typical high school American party. And she gets super mad, and, like, she goes over, and they have this weird confrontation thing, and, like, her best friend's boyfriend actually stands up for her, and, like, all of a sudden he's a nice guy when she's on his side kind of thing. And then she leaves, like, storms out of the party and goes home. And then Toby leaves the party and comes to her and was like, I'm so sorry, like, I love you, I shouldn't have left you, blah, blah, blah. And she's super mad at him, but then because he says, I love you, she takes him back. And then they're about to sleep together again, which, like, just makes no sense. How can you go from being so mad to somebody because, like, he dumped you on the day of your father's funeral with no explanation, and then you don't see him for a month, and they're just gonna sleep? Anyway, they don't end up sleeping together. I can't remember why. And then he goes back home, and then she follows him, and they, like, fall asleep together. And then they go back to her house and fall asleep together. And anyway, it turns out it's her birthday, and he surprises her with a trip to Disneyland with the best friend and the best friend's boyfriend. And they have a great day and everything. And they come home, and the girl that was draped all over Toby at the party is at her house for some reason. And, like, she's basically put it in that she's Toby's cousin, said that to Eva's mum, and they've set up, like, a party together and everything. And then they're, like, at the party, and things are really tense and awkward because they're trying to figure out why the cousin, who's not actually a cousin, is there. And they turn around and they see that Frankie, who is the ghost, is no longer a ghost, but is real. And they, like, Eva passes out, and, like, her mom freaks out, and a whole bunch of stuff happens. Anyway, Eva now wants to know what the heck is going on. And so basically, again, there's a lot of wasted time where, like, nobody wants to tell her, and, like, everyone's telling her to just, like, go to sleep and they'll discuss it in the morning because she passed out, and so she's clearly not doing well. She's like, no, just tell me now. Like, I need answers. What the heck? And so it turns out that the boyfriend of her best friend actually does know Toby. I still don't know why, but they do know each other. And he starts saying, like, your boyfriend's not who he says he is. He's a soul collector. And so Toby starts explaining, like, yeah, we go around and, like, we collect the souls of dead people and guide them to the afterlife. So basically, if there's a ghost stuck around, we guide them to the afterlife. And she's like, what? Like, I don't believe in soul collectors. What the heck? Which it seems like the minimal issue here. I don't know why that's what she's worried about, but it turns out that, like, that's what he does for a job, is he goes through and guides people who die but who end up sticking around as ghosts back to, not back to, but to the afterlife. And that's why he had gotten a relationship with her originally, is because he knows about Frankie and he'd come here to help guide him to the afterlife, because it's been 2 years of him being stuck as a ghost. And so then she feels betrayed that, like, that's the only reason they got together. But then he says, no, but I realized how much I loved you, and that's why I stuck around, kind of thing. But now everything's changed because Ariadne, who's the cousin, has brought him back, kind of thing. And he's like, that's against all rules and there's going to be consequences. And she's like, well, what the heck? What does it mean? And this is where I'm up to, so I don't know anything past this. But he's like, well, his soul belongs to her now. And it's just like, oh my gosh. What the heck? Like, this has just gone from some, like, random nothing happening for, like, 19 chapters. And then all of a sudden, her dad dies. And she gets back together with her ex after a month of depression. And then Frankie gets turned into a real person again. And it's just like, what the heck is happening? And you also just get no explanation for anything. Just no explanation for anything. So, I don't know what's going on. But it's just vibes. Like, it's a good book. You just don't know anything. Like, for some reason, over the month, she became really good friends with Greg, the best friend's boyfriend. And, like, you just don't see it. It just gets mentioned. And so it's stuff like that where it's like, I wish you would explain. Or, like, it never explains her relationship with Frankie, the ghost, either before the accident or after. Like, you just get told that she loves him, but nothing happens. Like, it doesn't explain, like, what they did in their childhood and, like, why they were so close or any memories together. There's no flashbacks. There's no, like, it's, you just get told stuff and you just got to accept it. So it's like, it's a fine book. I just think that's why everything feels so sudden, because it's like, whoa. But why? Anyway, I'm probably only going to update when I finish this book because I'm super close to finishing.
I apologize for all the background noise because I have our, like, dust collector going on here, and then I couldn't remember what I'd last said because it's been like 2 weeks since I last updated about the book, and so I thought I'd just edit the video first so I can remember what I said and then I can film this. But for some reason my laptop is just going really loud, and so there's just lots of background noise. Anyway, I've now finished the book, which you saw in the last clip. That was my having just finished silent reaction, and really nothing more happened. Basically, she breaks up with Toby, who's the boy next door soul collector guy, because he won't give her answers, and also because she's just mad at him that the whole reason they got together in the first place was so that he could get close to Frankie and guide his soul back to the afterlife. And so she breaks up with him. And then because Frankie's now, like, a real boy, they kind of don't talk, kind of do talk about their feelings, and then she sleeps with him, which is just super random because this whole book has either been complete vibes about ghosts or, like, her just trying to sleep with people, which feels really strange for a YA. But anyway, she sleeps with Frankie and she's like, I always wanted it to be you, blah blah blah. And then the next day, they go over to Toby's house. Like, they try to go to a party with the best friend, and that obviously goes badly because Frankie died, and the neighborhood knows that he died. But basically, they go over to Toby's in the morning to speak to Ariadne and to Toby to try and figure out what's happening. And after a very, very long-winded, repetitive conversation that does not need to be this long, she basically finds out that in order to bring Frankie back, Ariadne has to take a soul. So basically it's a soul for a soul. And she's decided that because she wants Toby, because they were originally together, Toby and Ariadne were originally together. Because Ariadne wants Toby back, the only way to do that is to get Eva out of the equation. And so in exchange for Frankie's life, she's planning on taking Eva's life. But for some reason she's got like 365 days. So then it just ends on this big cliffhanger of like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? And it was like, it's why I was so confused. I was like, well, what the heck? That is the most random, ridiculous, weird ending. So I think I'm going to rate this book like a 3, because I feel like the vibes were there and it was a good time, and then it was just weird. And when I was rewatching my review of everything that happens, where it's like the dad dies and her mom goes into a depression and Toby leaves her and blah blah blah, like all of that stuff, if that had have been spread across the whole book, I think it actually could have been a decent book. But I think it's because that was such a small section and the rest of it was just random repetition of stuff that we didn't need to know. It's not better than a 3. But I've decided to be generous because the last book definitely sucked. And I'm just going to give this one a 3 because, you know, it was an enjoyable read. It just wasn't really more than that. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this, and I would actually definitely recommend Qualify if you get your hands on it, or if you take part in the next Stuff Your Kindle Day. Like I said, I think there's one that's coming at the end of November. I do know now, like it's the 12th of November when I'm filming this, I do know now that there was one at the end of October, and so I really should have got this out for then, because they had like a paranormal slash dystopian themed Halloween giveaway, and I don't know what the one in November is going to be like, but yeah, definitely stay tuned for that. And I would get Qualify if you can. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't bother with Sequence. And with this one, like the Eva trilogy, if you're happy with the 3 books, you can definitely get the trilogy. It was a fine read. It was good, easy, good vibes, like I kept saying, but I don't know, maybe you'd like it, and maybe I'm just being harsh. But anyway, I'm going to end this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I've actually already started reading the Christmas books, which I'm going to try get my review out by the end of November, but I don't know how much that's going to be pushing it. Otherwise, I thought I should probably update that I'm planning on doing Vlogmas this year, which is something I've always wanted to do, but I've kind of never had the opportunity because I started my channel like halfway through December originally, so that was 2021, and then last year we were in New Zealand and we had weddings and it was our wedding anniversary and everything, so it was too busy. And so I figured this year I'm going to try and make it work. I might miss a few days and therefore have to combine some because we are going away, but I think I can make it work. At least that's my plan. So definitely stick around if you want to see Vlogmas and see what we get up to as New Zealanders in a European Christmas time, basically. Hopefully there'll be snow. That is my goal, is I just want to see some snow in December. But thank you so much for watching, and definitely stick around to see some more book videos coming out soon. I also have study with me videos coming out and a couple of work with me videos. So yeah, I'll see you with another video very soon. Bye!